This is from my future book, Jesuit Empire's Secret History. Abraham Lincoln was Chiniquy's most noble and devoted friend. He had worked over a year defending him. Chiniquy asked Lincoln for the bill. "Mr. Chiniquy, your case is unique," Lincoln said. "I have never met a man so cruelly and unjustly persecuted as you have been. Your enemies are devils in flesh. Their plot against you was the most hellish I've ever known. You owe me nothing." But Chiniquy insisted and paid him. Lincoln would only accept $50 after over a year defending Chiniquy. Chiniquy trembled for Mr. Lincoln and wept. Sitting in the crowd of that trial were 12 Jesuit priests from Chicago and St. Louis who came to hear my sentence to prison. Nothing can describe the rage on their faces when you wrenched me from their cruel hands, and how you made the courthouse tremble when you exposed their diabolical plot to destroy me. But I saw in their fiendish eyes your death sentence. Sign this IOU, Father Chiniquy. Lincoln did not smile. It will be my death warrant. Mr. Chiniquy signed it. Lincoln became solemn. I know the Jesuits never forget nor forsake and never give up. But a man must not care how or where he dies, provided he dies at the post of honor and duty. Dr. Alberto Rivera, ex-Jesuit priest, said, "The master plan for the United States fall was underway in the Vatican. The Jesuits and Pope Pius IX were preparing to send French troops into Mexico under Maximilian to back the South when the Civil War began. Abraham Lincoln knew all this was going on when he became president. He was moving up in politics. The one man Rome hated was nominated on May 18, 1860, by the Republicans to become president. By the same token, the one man Rome hated, Donald Trump, was nominated on July 19, 2016 by the Republicans, the party of Lincoln, to become president. The issue before the people was slavery. I don't believe the Negro is any kin of mine at all, Douglas shouted. It is written in the sky of America that the slave shall someday be free, Lincoln said. The Jesuit-controlled press blasted Lincoln with everything they had. The Democratic newspapers nationwide called Lincoln an ape, a stupid brute, a most dangerous lunatic, a bloody monster, a merciless tyrant, etc., etc. Does this sound familiar as we hear the Jesuit-controlled news media blast Donald Trump in 2016, using similar labels? The Vatican ordered Lincoln stopped at all costs. In 2016, the Vatican, under Jesuit control, has ordered Donald Trump stopped at all cost. Chiniquy heard of a plot to kill Lincoln, so he rushed to Washington to see his old friend. Lincoln was happy to see him. "You see, your friends, the Jesuits, haven't killed me yet." He could only give Chiniquy 10 minutes. Lincoln invited Chiniquy back the next day. "Something puzzles me, and you're the only one I can talk to about it. A great number of Democratic newspapers written by Roman Catholics say that I was born a Roman Catholic and baptized by a priest. They call me a renegade and an apostate and heap a mountain of abuses on my head. At first I laughed about that lie. I've never been a Catholic. But the way they keep repeating it like it's the gospel truth must have some meaning. A renegade is someone who deserts his religion for a hostile one. An apostate is one who denounces his own religious faith. It does have meaning, Mr. President," Chiniquy said. "I cried when I saw that article. It's your death sentence." Chiniquy collected himself. "An ex-priest told me these newspaper stories are to incite the fanaticism of the Roman Catholic murderers they hope to find sooner or later. They have invented this lie of you being born a Roman Catholic and being baptized by a priest because they want to brand your face with the mark of apostasy. Don't forget that in the Roman Church, an apostate is considered an outcast who has no right to live." Chiniquy showed Lincoln a book. "In this you will read how Jesuits feel about apostates. The author of this book is one of the most learned Jesuits of his time. He feels, along with many others, that the man who will kill you will do a good and holy work." He handed the book to Lincoln. "In this book is a copy of Pope Gregory VII's decree, who proclaimed that the killing of an apostate or a heretic or an excommunicated man as you are declared to be, is not murder. Instead, it is a good Christian act. That decree is incorporated in the canon law that every priest must study and which every good Catholic must follow. Chiniquy paused to consider his thoughts. You must protect yourself. In the past, Jesuit assassins have killed many leaders. The Catholic Church has the same heart it had during the Inquisition. All Catholic leaders in the U.S. are on the side of the South, which is proof that Rome wants to destroy this republic. My blood runs cold when I contemplate the day which may come sooner or later when Rome will add to all her other iniquities your murder. Chiniquy, President Lincoln said, I feel more and more every day that it is not the Americans of the South alone I am fighting. I fight the Pope of Rome and his perfidious Jesuits and their blind and bloodthirsty slaves. This is more a religious war than a civil war. There are only a very few of the Southern leaders who are not more or less under the influence of the Jesuits through their wives, family, relations, and friends. Several members of Jeff Davis's family belong to the Roman Church. The majority of the Roman Catholic bishops, priests, and laymen are publicly for slavery. Lincoln paused and looked out a window. The Roman Catholic Chief Justice at that time said, Negroes have no rights which the white man is bound to respect. Dred Scott decision from 50 Years in the Church of Rome by Charles Chiniquy, page 288. There is a thing that is very certain. Lincoln placed his hands on Chiniquy's shoulders and bowed his head. If the American people could learn what I know of the fierce hatred of the greater part of the priests of Rome against our institutions, our schools, our most sacred rights, and our so dearly bought liberties, the people would drive Catholics away tomorrow from us, or they would shoot them as traitors. But I must keep those sad secrets in my heart. You are the only one to whom I reveal them, for I know you learned them before me. When General Meade, a Roman Catholic, fought for the North, he defeated Robert E. Lee's army and was ready to pursue the beaten army to end the war. Lincoln learned that a disguised Jesuit, a stranger, entered Meade's tent. After that Jesuit visit, Meade took so much time making arrangements that Lee's army got away. Meade only captured 2 guns. Lincoln's enemies were all around him. Meade's loyalty to Rome was greater than his patriotism to his United States. 50 Years in the Church of Rome, Charles Chiniquy, page 298. Chiniquy rode with President Lincoln to visit the 30,000 wounded who were picked up on the battlefields around Richmond, where General Grant was breaking the back of the Southern Rebellion. Chiniquy, Lincoln's face became somber. This war would never have been possible without the sinister influence of the Jesuits. We owe it to the Pope that we now see our land reddened with the blood of her noblest sons. 50 Years in the Church of Rome. See Chiniquy, page 296. Chiniquy gazed at the fields drowned in blood. Lincoln nodded his head with sadness. If the people knew the whole truth, this war would turn into a religious war, and it would become a war of extermination on both sides. The Protestants of both the North and South would surely unite to exterminate the priests and Jesuits. The horses galloped in the carriage in which they both sat, and they arrived at the White House. What do you think of the letter the Pope wrote to Jeff Davis? Lincoln said to Chiniquy, calling him the illustrious and honorable President of the Confederate States? That letter tells the Roman Catholics that you are a bloodthirsty tyrant because you are fighting against a government which the infallible and holy Pope recognizes as legitimate. That letter means that you will give an account to God and man for the blood and tears you caused to flow in order to satisfy your ambition. The Vatican Moscow Allowance, Avro, Manhattan, page 271, Ralston Pilot Incorporated, 24 Ansdell Terrace, Kensington, London, W8, England. That letter changed everything. It meant that for Roman Catholics, that for Lincoln to fight the South was to fight the Pope himself and God and Jesus Christ. The killer, John Wilkes Booth, jumped to the stage below. His spur caught in the flag and he broke his leg. He shouted to a stunned audience holding a dagger in his hand, "Sic semper tyrannis," which means thus always to tyrants, and he escaped. Pope Pius IX and his Jesuits found Roman Catholics willing to kill the president. Headquarters for this operation was the house of Mrs. Mary Surratt in Washington, D.C. Priests were in the Surratt home day and night. John Wilkes Booth rode to Dr. Mudd's home to have his broken leg set. He was killed in a shootout April 26. Around his neck was a medal of the Virgin Mary. In his diary were these words, "I can never repent. God made me the instrument of his, Lincoln's, punishment." Page 310, 50 Years in Rome. Mary Surratt was one of the most devout Roman Catholic women in Washington, D.C. The day after Lincoln's death, her daughter said, "His death was no more than the death of any nigger in the army." Lewis Payne stabbed Secretary of State Seward. Davy Herold was to assassinate Vice President Johnson. Johnson survived. George Atzerodt helped Booth to escape. Dr. Samuel A. Mudd was part of the conspiracy. The trial was held. The high officials in the U.S. government were frightened. The Roman Catholic issue had to be avoided at all costs. The trial was a bomb. The Roman Catholic issue was played down. 8 were found guilty and 4 hung for their part in the crime. Mrs. Surratt, Lewis Payne, Davy Herold, and George Atzerodt. The others were given prison sentences. The poor slaves of Rome paid, while the Jesuits got off scot-free. General Baker said all of the conspirators attended Catholic church services and were educated in Catholic schools. At the execution, the Jesuits asked 3 of their converts to conceal that they were really Roman Catholics for the good of the church and be attended by Protestant ministers, to create the impression that the conspirators were Protestants. John Surratt, with the help of priests and bishops of Rome, got out of the U.S. and ended up in the Pope's personal bodyguards called the Zouaves. He was discovered, and the U.S. demanded his return from Rome. He was brought back for trial. Rome saw to it that 3 of the people in his jury were Roman Catholics. They blocked the guilty verdict of the others, and John Surratt had to be released. The Vatican and Jesuits won again. So, that is my sample from my future book, Jesuit Empire's Secret History. I expect to finish the paperback in Kindle in September, and the audiobook will be done probably after the elections, which is why I'm making this oral reading of part of the book. I sort of took parts of the chapter called The Assassination of American President Abraham Lincoln and put it in here. I can see right now that the Jesuits plan to rig the November elections, and I believe they're lying about the poll numbers and trying to make it appear that Hillary Clinton is ahead in the polls, that she got a significant bump after the Democratic convention. I believe that's all lies, but I'd like to encourage all of my followers to vote for Donald Trump and also to pray that God's will be done in this election. I am the Empress, and if worse comes to worse and Hillary Clinton becomes president with her Jesuit vice president, which is pretty brazen of the Jesuits are so certain they've covered up their history, they think they can get away with this. They think that everybody thinks the Jesuits are a benevolent organization and just an arm of the benevolent Roman Catholic Church. But as my next book will show, the Jesuits are nothing but benevolent. They are sly fanatics who won't retreat before anything, and they will resort to anything and everything to get worldwide power for the Pope of the Roman Catholic Church. Right now, the true leader of the Roman Catholic Church is Jesuit Zach Knight, and Pope Francis is just his patsy, his assistant. Zach's in control. Hillary Clinton has a Jesuit for a vice president. Need I say more?